Hello, how are you? Great question, Marcia. A charter really is a legal document that establishes rights and responsibilities. Now, if you look across the globe, you will not really see governments as Barbados has done. You will not really see a charter being resolved in Parliament that concerns the nation, but you will find governments making charters with companies, with local organizations, or you would see countries making charters with other countries in international law. But that charter or the charter generally would establish certain rights and responsibilities. Now, what I would say concerning Barbados is that the Barbadian government has said that this charter is not a legal document, but it has said that this charter contains the desires and the wishes of the Barbadian society. The charter refers to discrimination, and it says that Barbados opposes discrimination in any form, all forms of discrimination. Barbadians oppose. Now, persons looking at the word discrimination will say, well, nothing is wrong with that. But when you look at how discrimination has been used in international human rights law and how the interpretation of discrimination or the application of discrimination to local state laws in USA, United Kingdom, if you look at how that has been applied to restrict religious freedom, then that is a problem that I have. The government is saying we oppose discrimination in all forms. What does that mean? Is the spoken word a form of discrimination that will be opposed? And we know that the church speaks, pastors preach, teachers teach. The church is involved in the spoken word. The church is involved in writing. The church is involved in speaking. So will the church be bridled by the plans that the government has for Barbados under this charter? So those are some of the concerns, but I'm also looking at the introduction of the terms or the words sexual orientation, gender, tolerance, inclusivity. Now, these are some words that have been placed within this charter that are strange to Barbadian society. Tolerance, inclusivity. These are not words or things that you will find on the Barbadian tongue as they speak. These are not things that you'll find in Barbadian society, but these words come from somewhere. And when you look into the international human rights law and everything concerning international human rights organizations, United Nations, just to name one, you will find these words being used: tolerance, inclusivity, that you must be inclusive. Societies must be inclusive. Societies must be tolerant. What does this mean? And these words have been used to restrict religious freedom. And my major concern is the implications of these words, the implications of the charter concerning religious freedom and concerning the freedom of persons to let Barbadians know their views on certain issues. Will our opinions, will our thoughts be censored, even though our thoughts and opinions, there are real opinions, there are our heartfelt opinions, will they be censored in this new Barbados? Total agreement. And this discussion, these concerns did not begin with this charter. A foundation has been laid in Barbados and in other Caribbean countries to change society, to change the values of society, to change the norms of the society in the Caribbean. I just look at our international obligations of Barbados. We have the Organization of American States and we have certain obligations. Barbados has certain obligations to the organization, and those international organizations and international treaties. And when you look at the judgments that have been coming out of the Inter-American Court on Human Rights concerning sexual orientation, concerning gender, same-sex marriage, and Barbados is bound to observe and implement these decisions. And there was a claim that was made against Barbados before the Inter-American Court on Human Rights concerning these same issues. So when you look at what has been happening, we're talking about years ago. This charter, I see it as a firm declaration by the government of Barbados that they intend to implement whatever has been coming out of the international legal arena, what has been coming out of the International American Court on Human Rights concerning sexual rights and sexual orientation and gender. I see this charter as a firm declaration that Barbados intends to implement these things within the Barbadian society. And the only way, or one of the ways, the major way to implement these things is through laws, through the law and through policy. But I just want to say before you continue, Marcia, concerning parental rights, we have a situation in Barbados, and I believe in other countries, where parents do not necessarily know what their children are being taught on a daily basis. Yes, we have certain subjects, maths, English, but what about health and family life education? In that health and family life education topic or syllabus, what exactly are our children being taught? And this charter is purporting to say that Barbadians will believe in sexual orientation and gender tolerance, inclusivity, as I mentioned before. How will this strengthen the health and family life syllabus? How will this affect the health and family life syllabus? Will the health and family life syllabus change in such a way that our children must learn about these different or these alternative sexual lifestyles? Will teachers and schools be more bold in crafting their syllabus, this syllabus for this health and family life education? And the major thing coming out of this, Marcia, is that this does not just affect Parliament and politics. It affects the entire society. It affects our children. It affects the kind of things that our children read and see in school. This affects Barbados on a total general level that we have to be very vigilant in moving forward, and especially as Parliament decides to make laws to implement certain things that they have in the charter, we have to ensure that certain norms and certain values are protected in Barbados, and not just Barbados, in every Caribbean country that will be affected. But what will happen, Marcia, is that there will be a new constitution. So this will be an original document. So there really will be no amendments to the present constitution. There will be a new constitution. But let's look at the structure of the present constitution. We have a preamble, we have the fundamental rights and freedoms, and we also have clauses, provisions that relate to the structure of government, how government is run. Let's look at the charter. Charter has a preamble, and it mentions certain rights, fundamental rights and freedoms. It mentions how society, the relationship between persons in society, and the relationship between persons and the government. When you look at those two structures, you can see some similarities. You can see that there's certain things in the charter that will at some point in time have to be placed within the constitution itself. The charter I see the charter as a document that contains rights, contains freedoms. I spoke before about discrimination and the words tolerance, inclusivity. These are terms that have been used to form certain international human rights documents. As using that the contents of this charter, using what has gone, looking at what has gone before, there is a strong possibility that this charter will there's some elements of it will be contained in the new constitution, or it will influence the new constitution to a very great extent. We're just looking at the facts. We're just looking at the things that have been used in the charter. We're looking at the structure of the charter. We're looking at what the charter is saying. And if you're going to look at a constitution that governs the rights and the freedoms, that establishes these rights and freedoms of people in society, in the Barbadian society, there has to be something within the charter, some philosophical foundation. Because we're talking about philosophy, this charter of Barbados contains philosophies. It contains philosophies for fundamental rights and freedoms. And if your philosophy is wrong, or your philosophy has some issues with it, you're going to find yourself with a society where we don't know what is left and we don't know what is right. And one person is saying do this, the other person is saying do that, and we have a clash of rights and there's no balance whatsoever. And this is what has been happening in other jurisdictions, where we see persons fighting for these rights. And as soon as this person fights for their rights and the courts tell them, yes, you can have this right, you find that other rights, other fundamental rights are being diminished, because the person who is shouting the loudest, the person who has the more financial resources, the more political influence, their legal right has been elevated to a fundamental right. So the issue that I'm really getting at is that we're in a world, we're in a time, the 21st century, where legal rights are being seen as greater than a fundamental right and freedom. Example, religious freedom, fundamental. Every single country, any single person, no matter what country you're from, no matter what culture, they recognize the importance of religion. They recognize the importance of the expression of your religious belief. That is fundamental. But we have a world, a 21st century world, where countries are telling persons who want to express their religious views that they cannot say certain things and they cannot do certain things because it goes against who this other person is. It goes against the rights of this other person. You're discriminating by saying what the Bible says. The Bible that you believe, and that the Bible that has been written for centuries. They're telling governments and courts are telling Christians, telling persons who want to express their religious beliefs, that they cannot do it. They cannot express their beliefs to the full extent of their ability because some other person does not like it. Some other person does not like hearing what you're saying. Some other person does not like seeing what you're writing in a newspaper or what you're writing on social media, because it goes against their rights, their legal rights. There is a group of Christian attorneys here in Barbados, of which I'm a part. But we will meet, discuss certain issues, and also pray. But in relation to, and if there's any assistance that other groups may need, we will do that. But not officially as the fellowship in Jamaica, as Shirley just said. But there are steps, and we have been looking at establishing an official body to respond to these issues, because these issues really are legal issues. The intentions and the actual actions of government in making these changes, they affect in the major part the law. and really the only way to advocate, or one of the major ways to advocate for the preservation, as Shirley would have mentioned, the preservation of certain values and norms in society, is through legal submissions to Parliament, to government. So attorneys play a very important role, before, but also as it stands now, with all of the different things that are happening in politics and happening concerning our laws, not just in Barbados. Attorneys will play a major role. But I'm hoping that the, we won't call it Christian fellowship, but the Christian attorneys, that group of Christian attorneys will be able to be more, play a major or more important role in ensuring that these norms and values in Barbados are preserved,
Mm-hmm.
and that it is the preservation is said specifically in our laws, stated specifically in our constitution, because the constitution really is the supreme law of Barbados, the supreme law of Jamaica, supreme law of Trinidad,
Right.
and the constitution really affects every other law, or policy that is being made, in the country, in that particular country. So whatever is placed in that constitution, it has to be. I know I saw a question concerning the legal rights, the how the constitution would affect legal rights, or if the constitution can be changed. Yes, the constitution can be changed, but the constitution is such an important document, an important legal document, that it should not be changed willy-nilly, using those terms.
Mm-hmm.
In Barbados, the constitution can only be amended in certain parts there must be a two-thirds majority of both houses, of both the House of Assembly, both Senate. In normal circumstances, you will not be able to get a two-thirds majority in every case. But in Barbados, in Barbados, the government has the majority. So it is easy to amend. It is easy to make amendments to the constitution now in Barbados, because we really don't have an opposition in parliament. So the situation in Barbados is ripe for changes. Is ripe for the parliament to make certain decisions, and they have already done that, as we see with the charter, with what is happening with the transition to a republic. We are seeing some major changes because of the political situation here in Barbados. Yes, I heard what Minister Jordan said concerning separation of church and state, and this is the argument that is used on several occasions to diminish the authority or the responsibilities of the church, to say anything at all concerning governance and concerning how things are being done um, from Parliament. But I just want to look at the constitution, the present constitution of Barbados, which says that Parliament must make laws for the peace, order, and good government of Barbados. Peace, order, and good government. These are the considerations that Parliament must be taken into account when they're making any laws whatsoever. Does the Bible does the Bible have anything to say about order, good government, peace? Does the Bible have anything to say about how leaders should rule? Does the Bible have anything to say about how society should be ordered? Does the Bible have anything at all to say about peace? Anything at all to say about the relationship between people and the relationship between people and their leaders? The Bible has plenty to say about that. And the church has plenty to say about righteousness, justice, law. The Bible contains laws. The Bible contains information, wisdom. There's so much within the Bible that any government, no matter the foundation of the government, no matter the culture of the government, The Bible contains knowledge, wisdom that any government can use in their governance, in their making of laws. So on that foundation, we have that foundation, but we also have the responsibility of the church to God. What does God require the church to do? Does God require the church to see the government going in the wrong direction and say nothing? Does God require the church to just see the society being governed by ungodly principles and say nothing at all and just continue opening the church and it's just business as usual while society is going into the doldrums, as they say? Is that all the responsibility that God has given to the church? So when we look at these things, when we look at all of the things concerning church and concerning the responsibilities of the church, nothing to do with the fact that Christians are also citizens of Barbados, that Christians also pay taxes, that Christians also have a right to participate in civil society. So we even putting the religion and the church's responsibility aside, as an individual, the church is made up of individuals who have the right to participate in civil society. Pastors and church leaders have a responsibility to their congregation. And the things that Parliament does, the thing that government does, affects our congregations. So they come to the pastor for advice. They come to the pastor for how am I going to get through this, pastor? These are things that pastors deal with on a daily basis. So shouldn't pastors say something publicly about the things that are affecting himself and his congregation, his or her congregations? So these are the issues. So as much as persons may say there's separation between church and state, there is no separation between individuals and the state. The state has a responsibility to individuals, and individuals also have responsibilities to the state, and individuals can be found in the church. The things that the state does affects individuals who are also part of the church, who also have religious beliefs, who also want to express their religious beliefs, who also has a conscience. They have thoughts and opinions that need to be heard. So they just say in the church building? No. They have a right to say in public, and they have a right to influence others. They have a right to tell Parliament, tell the state, this is what I would like you to do. I would like you to uphold the sanctity of marriage. I would like you to order society in such a way that righteousness is preserved, that righteousness is observed. This is the right of the church. So the separation between church and state argument does not hold any water, in my opinion. But I know His Excellency will give us some more information about the foundation of this whole argument about church and state. But I'm just looking at it from those levels that it holds no water whatsoever in this discussion. Well, my question is, whose responsibility is it
Precisely.
to determine the morality of a country? The laws affect society. The laws determine values. We have a Sexual Offences Act that outlines the values of Barbados concerning sexual activity. So laws contain values, laws contain norms. It contains what the majority of society believe is right. So
Correct.
to say that it is not the responsibility of the state to legislate morality, that is not true. Parliament, as I said before, Parliament has the responsibility to make laws for peace, order, and good government. Morality, the responsibility of the state, the responsibility of Parliament is to ensure that the morals of society are preserved, protected, and the majority of the persons, the individuals in society have to inform Parliament what really are the morals of the society. Parliament cannot make law, or should not make certain laws that will affect society, affect the relationship between persons, without finding out what the society believes is right and what the society believes is wrong.
Mhm.
What we have here is that Parliament makes laws, and according to the Constitution, the court, judges, are responsible for interpreting these laws. And
Mhm.
what we are having here is that judges interpret these laws. Sometimes they interpret it in ways that are not conducive to good morals. We see here in Trinidad concerning the sexual buggery or sodomy. Judges, when we're talking about challenges to these laws, buggery laws, sodomy laws, judges they're not going to bring a lot of legal arguments. They're going to bring arguments such like society has changed
Mhm.
since the 20th century, and that society is the society of Barbados, society of Trinidad are more readily accepting of this behavior. They're going to use philosophical arguments, sociological arguments, which may not necessarily be true.
Mhm.
So what I find is that Parliament is um, transferring their responsibilities to the court. What Parliament really should do is, in their laws, state specifically what they mean.
Mhm.
State specifically what this particular law means to the Barbadian society or to the Trinidadian or Jamaican society, instead of just shirking the responsibilities and allowing the judges to bring their own interpretation to what Parliament has said. But I'll also ask those persons, those Christian individuals, let your church leader know your concerns. Let your
Yes.
church leader know your thoughts,
Yes.
what you're thinking about Barbados's implementation of the charter, the republic. Let your church leader know exactly what you're feeling. Be real with him or her. And because sometimes, yes, we sit down together in the congregation at church, we sing, we listen to the sermon, um, and yes, we may talk after the service about certain things, but we really don't speak about things that are happening in the society that
Exactly.
may affect
Exactly.
us. And we have persons within our congregations who work in the civil service, who work in the public service, and
Correct.
they are affected on a daily basis um, from decisions that are being made from leaders in society,
Mhm.
and these things impact them and impact how they interact with their brothers and sisters in Christ. But these are things that are not spoken of really. We come to church, but we really don't speak about these things. So I would ask Christians to let your church leaders know what you're thinking about these things, so that church leaders can now respond from a position of knowledge, and church leaders can, in their mind, they can say, "Well, my congregation needs me to deal with this, so I'm going to deal with it."
Mhm.
Because
Yep.
if church
Yep.
leaders, if the congregation, if to in the mind of the church leader, if he or she doesn't believe that it is important to the congregation, then it will be business as usual for the church, and they will just continue to focus on their vision and their goals. But if the congregation united comes to the pastor and tells him or her, "Pastor, you have to do something. We have to. What is the church's stance?" 'Cause I have heard this before.
Mhm.
Persons have come to me and asked me, "What is the church's stance on this?"
Mhm.
So it is a responsibility of that church leader now to respond. They have to respond in some form,
Somewhere. Yeah.
fashion. Yes, there is a particular specific philosophy contained within, particularly the first article and the second article. That particular philosophy is a philosophy, it is not a Barbadian philosophy, it is an international human rights philosophy.
That's right. That's right.
And once, if you read it and you read and you see particular words such as tolerance, inclusivity, discrimination, sexual orientation, gender. When you see these terms, when you read these articles and with the knowledge of international human rights law and international human rights philosophies, you will see a similarity. And what we have to be very cognizant of is the philosophy that underpins this charter and the philosophy that will, I believe, underpin the new constitution. And that philosophy that underpins the charter and is possible to underpin the constitution is not a philosophy that Barbados needs. It is not a philosophy that will help the development of Barbados, because we're talking about a philosophy that has been used to restrict fundamental rights and freedoms, a philosophy that has been used to restrict religious freedom, freedom of expression. So we have to be very careful moving forward that the philosophy that we see in the charter does not overwhelm the philosophy of peace, good government, and order that underpins the present constitution. We have to be very careful that Parliament does not go overboard with this new constitution, so that the contents of the fundamental rights and freedoms clauses in this new constitution do not give rights to persons that will restrict fundamental rights and freedoms of Christians, particularly Christians, but also persons who have an opinion. Because in Barbados, it is not just Christians that have an opinion about what is happening in society. We have people in the rum shop, Barbadian rum shop, that speak about the things that are happening in society. They also have opinions. So yes, we are talking about in a Christian aspect, but we have to be very vigilant about how Parliament is going to word, how they're going to structure this new constitution, and the implications of the content of this new constitution. But when you look at the charter, you see that specific philosophy, and it is not a philosophy that is advantageous to persons who want to speak in public on certain issues.